Good afternoon, everybody. This is Tom Luongo. Welcome to Gold Goats and Guns. We're going to sit down today and have a chat with my new best friend, Mike Shedlock, or otherwise known as Mish. Mike runs his blog over at moneymaven.io. I absolutely recommend it. And Mike's been killing it on Brexit. And I know a lot of you that follow me know that you think that I'm killing it on Brexit. And truth be told, I read Mike's stuff before I ever write any of my stuff. So with that said, Mike, if you want to introduce yourself real quick, go right ahead and do so, and then we'll get started with the conversation.
First off, Tom, it's a pleasure to be on the show. Enjoy it. Thanks for the opportunity. Tom reached out to me on Twitter, and I said, hey, let's do it. Here I am in Starved Rock. I'm a photographer, so I'm out catching the last of the fall colors. And Tom said, well, ping me later this week. I said, well, let's just do it right now. So here we are. So no, I spent a lot of time on Brexit. I've got a number of readers actually irritated of mine that I'm spending so much time on it.
Yep.
Tom, I think it's an important issue. I really think I would like to see the EU bust up. I would like to see Italy leave the Eurozone. I would like to see. I don't believe in these super states, so I'm against all of them. So to me, it's a pleasure to see Great Britain on the verge here, and I hope it happens, breaking away from the EU.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think I can put words in your mouth that we're both pretty close to Austrians in our economic outlook, and we're both libertarians and all that, because I've been reading your stuff, as I told you earlier. I've been reading you since you first went alive, and it's funny. I feel the same way, but at the same time, one of the things that you have to do when you're analyzing politics is you have to put your personal opinions aside, right? And just analyze the things that are happening. And one of the interesting things that's been going on with you and I in terms of how we're analyzing the tactical maneuvers within the Brexit negotiations that have been happening is it's like we're about in my mind, we're about 20 degrees off from each other, and we're not orthogonal, right? In our thinking, we're about 20 degrees off from each other, and in that 20 degrees difference, because I think I'm a little bit more cynical than you are, is where we are and like what people's motivations are, and that makes for really interesting back and forth. And we've been doing it on Twitter, and we've been doing it in blog posts back and forth. I just said, dude, we should just sit down and chat about this, because it's so much better to do it live and with real people, and so we don't have text, because text is the worst thing imaginable, because it's the worst way to communicate imaginable between two people or to anybody, and Twitter's like driving everybody insane. So better to just sit and chat about it so we know where we stand, so that we can figure out what's going to happen. Try and figure out what's happening.
What I liked about my last post time was, and actually the favorite one that I've done yet, and it actually turned into a live blog, because the news was happening like really fast. I said, I thought that France was really serious. Very few people did. And then all of a sudden this news came in supporting my position. Now, I'm not always right, of course.
Sure.
But and I might not be right yet. France can back down tomorrow for all we know. I was out hiking all day. I don't know if there's any recent news on this, so I'm actually chatting just off the cuff here.
Okay.
But what one has to understand, in my opinion, is why this all was believable, and it boils down to Johnson will do anything to get reelected. And on the French side, Macron actually wants, and he's one of very few in the EU, he wants this thing over, because he's going to pick up members of the European Parliament as soon as Great Britain is gone. And the other thing is, Great Britain, and it wouldn't surprise me at all, Tom, if Johnson actually made this threat, I'm going to destroy your policies. So they have this mutual interest, one of getting reelected, that's Johnson, and on the French side, Macron wants his his people to get elected or pick up extra people in the European Parliament that is going to support his position. So we have this perverse thing. It's not that either of these two guys can be trusted straight up.
No.
But they can trust each other's agenda because it's mutually aligned. That's the interesting thing about this.
Yeah, I see that point completely. And I was reading your post the other day, and I'll try and make sure that I have a link to it when I put the thing together. And I'll publish this on like YouTube. And but I watched, listened to that post. I read that post, and I read it 3 times. And I rarely read anything 3 times because and I read it 3 times, and I'm like, okay, to make sure that all the ins and outs, I've got all the ins and outs right here. And I agree with you that they have mutual interest in wanting to get this thing done and form this kind of odd couple alliance, or, politics makes strange bedfellows, right? But in my mind, I just don't see Macron as an order maker, as it were. And Murray Rothbard famously said that there's 2 types of people. There's in the world. There's taxpayers and tax consumers. Well, that's right. And then there's in politics, I've come to the conclusion that there are order makers and there are order takers, right? And Nancy Pelosi is an order taker. She purports to be an order maker, but she's not. She takes her cues, she takes her directions from other people. And I think Macron as well takes his orders from other people. And they're all dead set against any kind of substantive Brexit. And I think to me, and my response to that post was, what I was saying is, to me, it looks like the goal of all of these machinations is to betray Brexit without looking like they're betraying Brexit, right? And I look at the deal that Johnson and Barnier and Juncker and Macron have cooked up, and I say, it's good. It's better than Theresa May's deal, but at the same time, it is. But I also agree with Nigel Farage, because I watch him. I listen to his radio show, or watch his radio show every day, and so I really understand now where Nigel's position is on this. And his position is that he knows Barnier well enough to know that during the free trade negotiations, Barnier is going to try and claw back every win that Johnson just got. And I don't believe that Johnson's an order taker or order maker either. I think his job is really no different than Theresa May's. He may represent a slightly different portion of the British deep state, for lack of a better term, than May did. But at the end of the day, I don't trust either of them. So I think that at the end of the day, they really do want to craft a Brexit that is not that's really not Brexit. It's Brino, Brexit in name only, and that's where I think that's my. And so in my criticism, in many of my criticisms of your analysis, it's on that what I consider a pretty subtle point of difference, is that what's going to happen down the line. And so I would much prefer to see a no deal. I think you and I would agree about that. I know that
I'm a big staunch the UK wants the most. If it just says to hell with it and leave. The political reality has been, if he tries to do that, we're going to be stuck with Theresa May's deal, or something possibly even worse. And what would be worse than that? Theresa May's deal with Corbyn winning the election. It was possible.
It was possible. But and that was also interesting, and I don't know if you read the post that I put up the other night, which was that it may actually be that Jeremy Corbyn has sniffed all this out, and he's actually the one holding back a complete betrayal of Brexit and the Ken Clark. You brought it up in your latest post this morning or yesterday, saying that Johnson has neutered the Ken Clark threat, right? The threat that Ken Clark would be appointed as the caretaker, after a vote of no confidence in the Fixed Term Parliaments Act comes into effect, and blah blah, and that happens, and then Ken Clark would just betray them completely. And I see that. I also see that it's very possible that Corbyn understands this as well, which is why he refused to step aside as the potential leader of any caretaker government. Because in his heart of hearts, Jeremy Corbyn is a leaver. And I really do think that he knows, and it's just something that I think Meyer Tutsi is an up-and-coming YouTuber discussing Brexit. He's made the point that Britain's worker protection rights laws are better than the EU's. So Corbyn making all of these claims about, oh, this will gut workers' rights and all of this stuff that all rings hollow. It's good political theater, but it's not reality. In his heart of hearts, he knows that Britain's got better worker protection rights than the EU does from a Marxist perspective, and therefore, why is he blocking this deal unless he knows that this deal is really that bad in the long run for the Brits, because he knows it's not really
Actually,
Brexit.
Tom, I think it's much simpler than that.
Maybe.
He's just disagreeing with Johnson because it's the way he sees to get elected. I mean, my God, his this strategy of I'm going to negotiate a deal with the EU and then campaign against it. My God, I mean,
It's insane.
everyone in labor is saying, what is the matter? I mean, I can't conceive that this is a rational policy. However, what was interesting to me is that Euro intelligence actually defended this thing as reasonable. I get a lot of insights from Euro
Yes.
intelligence,
Yeah, you do.
but I'm not afraid to buck them. You know,
Sure.
when push comes to shove, because I just don't get that at all, Tom.
What's interesting though, Mike, when you really think about that, is that that's what Labor voted for at their party conference. They ratified that plan. So the rank and file Labor membership ratified that plan. It's the rest of Corbyn's shadow cabinet that doesn't like that plan. And to me, that screams that not to say screams, but it really implies that Corbyn's actually a lot more savvy than people make him out to be. And
I don't know, Tom. The Corbyn's caught in a box here.
Yeah, he is.
Because 60%, I think that's the right number, so forgive me, I'm just going to toss out a number here
Sure.
that I recently read. Of the labor votes came from people who wanted Brexit.
Mhm.
So Corbyn's trying to hold this whole unit together of people who want to remain, people who want Brexit, and people who want this and that. So he's concocted this scheme per force, but he was forced into saying, well, we'll negotiate this thing and then have a vote on it. He's just trying to keep all the pieces together, and he's not doing it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I find all of these things really interesting. This is one of the things you have to do when you're doing this kind of analysis, is to spin scenarios and then see how closely they align with something close to, how they align with reality. And of course, reality changes every 20 minutes anymore. And I do it in real time on my live streams and on a regular basis, and I do it, and we both do it on our blogs, and it's incredibly difficult. But I don't know, there's something about what's going on with Jeremy Corbyn. I've been watching him now every day in and day out. I've watched hundreds of hours of British Parliament. I mean, someone stabbed me with a fork. I just want to kill myself. Listening to watching the endless, virtue signaling and moral preening. It just drives me up a wall. But unfortunately, that's what we have to do. And because, as you mentioned at the outset, Brexit is the most important political event of the day. And I know my people are getting tired of it as well, because, again, they want to hear about Syria. They want to hear about, Italy. They want to hear about all these other things that are going on. I got people screaming at me to cover Serbia, right? And I don't know nearly enough about Serbia to even think about covering it, even though I know I should. But Brexit's more important, because if Brexit happens, so much happens down.
Yeah, it's
so
the
many
beginning of
effects
a
happen.
potential cascade.
Absolutely.
And man, do I want this thing to happen.
Okay, so
If it's anything but a customs union, we're starting the ball rolling on that way.
Okay. Now, I was thinking about this morning, right? Because I read stuff this morning, and I was thinking about this morning, and I have a thought that was coming into my head, because I do I do private market reports on Wednesdays and Sundays for my patrons over Patreon. And as I was writing up the Patreon little post about this, in support of that, I always write like a 2-paragraph post, to go with the YouTube. And I'm going to read it back to you. I'm going to read something back to you that I wrote this morning, and because I want your opinion on this. So this one's interesting, right? So, I understand completely your position about Macron having incentives to want to get this deal done as quickly as possible, get Brexit done and dusted, because it then accelerates his timetable for the United States of Europe that he wants the European Union to go into, and he also wants to completely neuter Angela Merkel. So here's the gig. I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this to you. So I'm in the camp that I don't believe Macron for a minute will be allowed to let a no-deal Brexit occur on Thursday, just to spite Angela Merkel. I don't think we're both in agreement about that. But here's the kicker.
I agree.
Right, but here's the
mistakes can happen, by the way. Though.
Right, mistakes can happen.
He can. We still don't know if Johnson has a trick up his sleeve. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Now, listen to this idea, and this riffs off of something you wrote earlier in the week, the fiscal disintegration of Europe. That post from earlier in the week about the fiscal disintegration of Europe was really, really good. I didn't understand all of it, even though I'm supposed to, but by God, was it good? Because here's when I put all of this together, this is what came into my head this morning, literally as I was writing that post. But here's the kicker. What if a no-deal Brexit is exactly what is needed to force Germany into such financial turmoil that Macron can then, with Christine Lagarde, force through a fiscal union by threatening Germany with Target 2 liability write-downs? Meaning that we have this state of insane internal transfers with Target 2 and other programs within the EU. And as you wrote the other day, why is Mario Draghi doing what he's doing with new QE unless it's in order to continue to pile up the liabilities on Germany's side of the ledger, in order to eventually use that against them and kind of by default force them into some kind of capitulation politically, because we know that a fiscal union is a political non-starter in Germany. So what they've done is, if you look at it, what they've done through Target 2 is they've backdoored the age-old adage that if you owe the bank $1,000, it's your problem, but if you owe the bank $850 billion, it's the bank's problem. In this case, the bank is Germany. So we need a catalyst to touch off the thing to get the ball rolling on the fiscal union. Otherwise, because if there isn't that catalyst, then this current situation will just continue to be papered over and papered over and papered over and papered over. But what if Macron is really that devious, and the people behind him, and why Lagarde was made head of the ECB, and why they wanted Brexit done on October 31st, because the new European Commission and Lagarde and everybody else takes over on November 1st. So, with that in mind, and all the things that you wrote earlier in the week, this to me seems like one of the main reasons why I can see Macron trying to blackmail everybody. Because once he's got Brexit done and he's got the Brits out with no vote, now he can turn his sights to Germany, because he'll have neutered Angela Merkel to the point politically that she's a non-starter. And Alex over at the Duran, I don't know if you follow Mercouris and Cristoforo over at the Duran, but they were talking about how Macron absolutely wants to kill off Angela Merkel.
Oh my gosh! I mean, absolutely. This whole thing. I can't even pronounce this word. It begins with S. Do you know the word? It was this whole feud between Germany and France on Weber. I mean, Macron failed on every position that he wanted, including Lagarde for the head of
the ECB.
The ECB. I'm pulling my hair out over that one.
Right.
But yes, it's clear that Macron has this agenda of the United States of Germany. Excuse me, not you, the United States of Europe, and that's what he's heading for. Now, is the UK a pawn in this?
Yes.
Perhaps it is. I don't discount that. But the other thing I don't discount, and I've been really, really torn over this, Tom, because I am a firm believer in Occam's razor. And Occam's razor suggests that the simplest explanation is most likely to be the true. And the simplest explanation here is these guys are just flat out stupid. Now, or in the case of Corbyn, the simplest explanation for him is he's just a flat-out egomaniac Marxist. So that's where I disagree with you on Corbyn, but I'm torn on Macron here on what you're suggesting.
Because if you really think about this, because look, Merkel's nearly spent politically. We just had the vote in Thuringia today, right? I don't know if you've been following that at all, but we had the vote in Thuringia today. Alternative for Germany, AfD, came in second behind Der Linke. Uh, but they outpolled the CDU, Merkel's CDU, by 2 points. They have a hung parliament in Thuringia. They have effectively the same thing happened in Brandenburg and Saxony last month. So Merkel's coalition is in the same state that the current British Parliament's in, and the same thing that's happening in Italy, the same thing that happened in Italy, which is that you have a minority government relative to the current polling holding on to power, right? The SPD, the Social Democrats in Germany, are polling at like 15%. The CDU is down under 30%, like 27%, and the Greens are up around 23%. So they don't represent a majority of the people. They're overrepresented in the Bundestag, and the same thing with Five Star and the Democrats in Italy, and in fact the same thing that's going on in the UK, and that all these parties are either underrepresented or overrepresented in such a way that that's what's created the political deadlock in all of these countries. At some point, something has to give. There's something is going to happen that's going to force a change. Now, Germany generally doesn't like to go for early elections. They like their political stability. They're not used to this at all. And but what we can see is with these state elections is that when the next German election happens, which is going to be in 2021, that we could see a very radical change.
Oh, it's going to be very radical. Mm-hmm. The Greens are winning.
Yes.
SPD is going out. Why do you think? Let me just tell you why I think SPD is holding on to this, and it's a very, very simple explanation. These people have really, really cushy jobs. Yep. If they end the alliance, which SPD probably for its own benefit ought to be willing to dump Merkel and get into alliance with somebody else. The problem is if they hold elections, they're going to get absolutely, totally wiped out. Mm-hmm. And what's on these guys' mind is to just keep their cushy jobs in their limos for as long as they can. That's the only thing, Tom, in my opinion, that's keeping this alleged grand coalition going.
Now, it's that and the fact that the people who run the SPD, who are in charge of the SPD and the CDU, are both order takers for what I like to call the Davos crowd. Right, the financiers and the bankers and the international and the globalist financiers that are the architects of the EU behind the scenes, and the people who meet in Davos every year and decide what's going on. It's interesting. I don't know if I ever told. I don't know if you heard this or not, but when I was writing about this stuff and Davos happened this year, I had a couple of people email me and actually comment on my blog directly saying, "Look, I work for these people. I was at Davos." Right, like long diatribes about what was going on, and it was like the mood at Davos this year was like a morgue. Like they knew they didn't have it. Nobody had any answers, and they all left the moment that the thing was done, and their staff was left with the whole city to themselves for like 4 days afterwards. They had the ski lifts were empty, and the bars were empty, and the booze was cheap, and they had a great time, and all the financiers, the bigwigs, they all went home. Like it was a morgue, like they just left the funeral, and their staff was all like, "This is great. This is the best Davos ever," right? So that should tell you everything you need to know about what they're thinking and why and how and why they're putting unbelievable amounts of pressure on the SPD, even though the leadership within the SPD absolutely does not want to be in a grand coalition with Merkel, but they're being forced to stay in it for as long as possible to try and hold all this together, because the EU is more important than anything else. It's the most important thing to people like George Soros and others. It has to happen. And so when I'm watching, so understand that when I'm doing the analysis on this, I'm always seeing the hand of these people behind people like Johnson and Macron and the rest of them, because you can't discount that too far. And I think it's just one of those things that I absolutely wanted to chat with you about to make sure that we were clear as to where they effectively the source of our difference in view on this was coming from, not for any other reason than just the outside, how far the outside influence actually stretches. I think it's very, very strong. I don't think it's as strong as some. I have some people on my patronage who literally believe that Farage is is a double agent. I'm like, no, that's nonsense. Farage is absolutely committed to Brexit.
I don't discount that. I mean, excuse me, I do discount that. Farage
Right.
is not a double agent. I
No,
said
not
that
at all.
backwards. But some other people, I don't know. It gets so commingled here that it's very difficult, and we get these endless, extension after extension after extension, and France is finally, apparently, we don't know yet. We're going to find out either tomorrow or Tuesday,
Right.
whether he caves in, and it's going to be interesting. The and Eurointelligence take is also going to be interesting. I really like Eurointelligence for one reason, Tom, because they are avid Remainers.
Yep.
They want the UK to stay in, to be aligned. Yet they do reporting that says this is what they think is going to happen, and much of the time what they say they think is going to happen does not hold their views. You have to respect that, Tom, and
Absolutely.
and I do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's the same thing with like the conversation we're having. We don't always agree with each other.
Sure.
But we're also willing to say our opinion of not what we want to happen, but what we think is likely to happen. Not
Absolutely.
that we're going to be right on that, but that's the discussion we're having right now.
Absolutely, and that's and I agree with you completely about that that perspective, right? And I do, and I hear you very clearly about Eurointelligence, because you've made that point on your blog many times, and I respect it. It's great. And so when you get a Remain group telling you that this is ugly, we don't like the situation, but this is what's gonna happen, yeah, you take that with a lot more. You take that with a lot more salt than
credible, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
When someone who wants to remain says, you know what, I don't think we're going to, and they've categorically ruled out, more referendum. Not that they're right, but that's how they see it. At least you're getting an honest opinion there, Tom.
I mean, I'm at that point where I don't want Boris Johnson to betray Brexit, but I have to go forward. And sometimes, Mike, I go out of my way to take a contrarian position, to play devil's advocate and take it as far as possible. Not because I believe that that's what's what's going to happen, or that's not what my best guess. I actually sometimes just do this for the express purpose of going down that route and seeing where it takes me, because you never know that quote unquote out there scenario and the spitball an idea that comes into your head. You have to explore it, because the only way we're ever going to get anywhere close to the truth is to go through as many scenarios as possible, and then kind of assign probabilities to what you think is the most likely scenario. But until you do that exploration, until you talk to other people and you do what we're doing, it's very easy to get caught up in sniffing your own farts, as it were. And that's just not. That's not good analysis, and that's not what we're paid for as quote unquote pundits, right? So no, it's really important, and it's all good, right? So I do this on purpose sometimes, just to say, oh, yeah, really, but I don't know. Boris Johnson's an enigma. He really is that guy that he's a wild card. I don't trust him, right? Like, I know that Donald Trump is an outsider that wants to do what he says he wants to do. And, at the same time that, he's also for Donald Trump. But those two things together make him really easy to analyze, right? I'm never really confused as to what Trump is doing, right? I don't agree with him. And I sometimes think his priorities are off, right? But I'm rarely confused about why he's doing what he's doing. I can be frustrated with him.
The weird thing, I'll just make a comment about Trump, and then I have to head on. What caught me as weird this last week is, Trump did one of the things that I thought was one of the better things that he's done, which is say, let's get the hell out of Syria. Now, I don't like the conditions under which he did this, by the way, but he finally said, let's get the hell out of here. It's none of our business. And this is actually one of the things that both the left and the right, Republicans and Democrats, he finally does something that everyone ought to fricking support, and it is the one thing that both sides, every side, has come out against Trump.
Right.
It's amazing. Is your perspective on that the same as mine?
Oh, well, without a doubt. I mean, I've known, remember, go back to 2008 when Ron Paul hit the scene. The minute Ron Paul took down Giuliani and then started rising in the polls, I'm like, hey, here it comes. Both sides are going to turn on him immediately. And, Fox News and MSNBC both hated him. And it was the same thing. And it's been going on for years. It's nothing new. What's interesting about Trump, just to leave you with the criticism of Trump and how he's dealt with the pullout of Syria, and we'll leave with this one. As I read a great article this afternoon saying, look, part of the problem with Donald Trump is that his staff has spent all their time and energy trying to stop him from doing what he said he is going to do and wants to do. Therefore, they weren't actually ever prepared for when he then gave the order. So he's been trying to get us out of Syria for over a year, and his staff has done nothing but try to stop him from doing that. And therefore, they never prepared militarily, logistically, or in any other way to get that done. There was no diplomatic stuff happening on the ground or any of that stuff that needed to be done. And so he just makes a decision out of the blue saying, look, I have to do it this way now because I'm not waiting anymore. And that's part of the reason why it was so disorderly. And it didn't need to be that way. But, but interestingly enough, now that he's done that once and probably fired a whole bunch of people behind the scenes, and half of them now are like in Adam Schiff's private Star Chamber impeachment hearings, Fiona Hill, John Bolton, and the rest of them. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens the next time he's there. For example, they're making plans behind the scenes now properly for Afghanistan. So they're publicly saying, okay, yeah, we're actually making proper plans to pull out of Afghanistan properly, because he wants that done by the election day, by the end of the election, because he knows that that's the most important issue for him to get reelected on. And so, because Trump's not stupid, Trump is very smart. So just to give you an idea, I think that, I can see that scenario being that way. And that's why I understand. I'm not apologizing for Trump. I don't think it was the right way to go about this, but that description of why it happened the way it did makes sense. So, but if you got to run, man, that's great. Thank you so much for
all
showing
right,
up.
Tom. I think this is great. We need to do this more often, once every other week or so.
Sure.
And I look forward to these. It was a great chat.
Enjoyed it, Mike. Enjoy your evening, and we'll talk to you after Brexit Day, or not Brexit Day, as this case may be. All right, be good.
Yeah, we might do the next one a little bit sooner. Just whenever we have a chance and we want to discuss what's on our mind. Let's go for it.
Sounds great to me. All right, you take care, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can follow me on Twitter over at TFL1728. You can follow Mike on Twitter at MishGEA. You can find his blog over at moneymaven.io/MishTalk. You can find me at tomluongo.me as well. If you like this today, you can always sign up over on Patreon at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns to get the Gold Goats and Guns investment newsletter. And don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel here. There are links in the video description down below. So you guys take care. You have a great day, and we'll talk soon. As always, keep your stick on the ice.